You're listening to a Roddenberry podcast.
This episode of Mission Log is brought to you by listeners like you, supporters on Patreon. Join us today at patreon.com/missionlog.
Mission Log, a Roddenberry Star Trek podcast, episode 412, Image in the Sand.
Welcome into another episode of Mission Log, a Roddenberry Star Trek podcast. I'm Norman Lau.
And I'm John Champion. Each week on Mission Log, we comb through each grain of sand in every episode of every Star Trek series ever, searching for the morals, meanings, and messages contained therein, and seeing if these episodes stand the test of time.
This week, Image in the Sand, the one where Sisko is trying to get his emissary groove back, while Worf tries to get by with a little help from his friends.
I'll be back with trivia in just a moment, as soon as Norman tells all of you how to reach all of us.
Mission Log is a conversation about Star Trek, and that's why we want to hear from you. Use Mission Log Pod to give us a like and a share on Facebook and Twitter. Then follow and rate us at Apple Podcasts to help others find the show. You can call us on Skype at Mission Log Pod or by dialing 323-522-5641. Send us an email at missionlog@roddenberry.com. And remember, we may use your comments on an upcoming episode of Mission Log. And now, like the sands through the hourglass, so are the details in John Champion's trivia.
Thank you for that kind introduction, Norman. Here we go, trivia for Image in the Sand. Well, it's an episode written by Ira Steven Behr and Hans Beimler, and we definitely should not be surprised here that Ira and Hans are picking up from where they left off in Season 6. They did so with a lot of intention to show that some things had changed. Incidentally, it was Nana Visitor who suggested a promotion for Kira, and clearly she was right. They also decided to slow things down. They purposely wanted a longer, slower teaser segment and wanted the events of last season to resonate a bit. They used the passage of time over the summer hiatus and in the storyline to their advantage. It was directed by Les Landau. There's a familiar name, even if we haven't seen too much of Les lately. He directed a lot of TNG, and then by the time he was on DS9, he was also alternating with Voyager. The last DS9 episode of his that we discussed was way back in Season 5 with By Inferno's Light. Okay, so indulge me here with a little jazz talk. That's why y'all signed up, right? Of course, we get Vic Fontaine performing All the Way, which is a terrific song, and probably the most famous recording of that is by Frank Sinatra. It was recorded in 1957, written by Jimmy Van Heusen and Sammy Cahn, and Frank's version is in the movie The Joker is Wild, also from that year. Now, I didn't realize it at first, but Ben Sisko is plinking away on the piano one of Thelonious Monk's most famous songs, Round Midnight, which he originally released in 1944. Even if you don't know that version, which is pretty easy to find, that song has the distinction of being the most recorded jazz song ever. It has been published no fewer than 1,000 times. So thank you, Monk. Let's talk about guest stars. We have a lot of our returning favorites: Jeffrey Combs, Casey Biggs, Brock Peters, J.G. Hertzler, and Jimmy Darren. Barry Jenner is back as Admiral Ross. We also have some new faces. Now, next week, we'll talk more about that new name in the credits, Nicole DeBoer, as someone called Ensign Esri Dax. But this week, let's turn our attention to Romulan Senator Kretek, played here by Megan Cole. Megan's credits are mostly from the 90s, with a string of TV guest appearances, this one falling toward the end of that list. And you may have caught her on L.A. Law or Seinfeld at the time. A few more spots into the mid-2000s round out her credits. Then we have a mysterious face in the sand. That would be Sarah, played by Deborah Lacey. Deborah got her start on TV in the late 70s and hit a number of TV guest spots as well. She's barely slowed down, though, and had a prominent recurring role on Mad Men and even appeared in the feature film Straight Outta Compton. We don't get too much of her in this episode, but she did describe the composite of effects that went into revealing her face. They built up a couple of life masks that they could use in the initial effect, revealing it in a sandbox filmed in studio. Then her real face was isolated and layered into the shot for her eyes opening. We will see much more of Deborah next week.
Who has peeled more potatoes since our last episode? John and Norm, or Captain Sisko? Let's check in and find out.
Prologue. A few months have passed since we last caught up with our friends at DS9. Kira is now a colonel and anticipating a visit from Admiral Ross with some news. Bajorans are feeling the sting of being cut off from the Prophet, some even turning to an ancient Pa-Wraith cult that sounds just fine, surely, no problem with that. The USS Defiant arrives home, captained by an agitated Worf, still hurting from Dax's loss and itching to get into battle again. And back on Earth, it's business as usual. Things are hopping at Joseph Sisko's restaurant, but Benjamin is distracted, banging away at a piano for hours on end, until his baseball rolls off, hits the floor, and stirs up a vision, a face of a woman with eyes opening in a sand dune on Tyree. All Ben knows is that he has to find her. Act 1. Admiral Ross arrives to tell Colonel Kira she'll have a guest, a Romulan, Senator Kretek. Should be just fine when she arrives with her entourage. Wayun and Damar, meanwhile, admire their strategic advantages in the Chintarka system and the sheer luck of continuing to win even with the wormhole closed for business. Damar admires it all through the bottom of his glass of Kanar, but he does express some wonder over what exactly happens in that space where the prophets and the Pa-Wraiths duke it out. And back to Benjamin Sisko, who is using the 3D identigraph, now pay attention 007, to figure out who the woman from his vision really is. He doesn't recognize the woman in the rendering, but Jake does. He's seen her before, in an old photograph that he found when cleaning up the storage room. The woman is with Grandpa Joseph, and when they show the picture to him, he becomes visibly upset, takes the picture away, and then runs off saying she's no one at all. Act 2. Poor Worf. He's still having trouble sleeping, and he escapes to the holosuite where he asks, he demands that Vic sing the song. You know the one. When somebody loves you, it's no good unless he loves you all the way. It was Dax's favorite song. And it pushes Worf into a frenzy where he wrecks the club. Later, Vic invites Bashir and Quark to survey the damage. It's bad, and it isn't the first time. Worf is taking this really hard, and he can't break the cycle. Vic implores Bashir to get to the bottom of it and help Worf. Elsewhere on the station, Kira meets her new guest. Kretek is businesslike, tough, but somehow different from the other Romulans. They might actually get along after all. Stay tuned. Back on Earth, there's still tension between Benjamin and his father. Joseph is in denial, telling his son to drop it, but Ben begs him. This woman was in a vision from the prophets, and he needs to know who she is. Okay, time for some real talk with the Siskos. Time to drop a truth bomb. Joseph explains that he met Sarah, the most beautiful woman he'd ever seen, in June of 2331. They fell in love, they married, and they had a child together, Benjamin Sisko. Act 3. With the truth out, Joseph explains more. He and Sarah were happy together for 2 years, and then she suddenly left right after Ben's first birthday. Joseph tracked her down, finally, but she had died while living in Australia, working as a photographer. He regrets never telling Ben the truth, but he didn't want to ruin the relationship he had with his stepmother. Now that they've had their moment, and anger and regret shared, Ben says it must have meaning that the prophet shared this vision with them while he came to clear his head. Kira's getting to know Senator Kretek. They have a personal moment, bonding over food recommendations, as you do. The senator lets Kira know that some Romulan warbirds will be stopping by for repair, and Kira is perfectly happy to cooperate with whatever they need. One more thing. Kretek asks if Kira could get permission for the Romulans to set up a hospital on the uninhabited Bajoran moon Derna. They just need a place to stop with their wounded rather than risk a long trip back to Romulus. Yep, the colonel says she'll ask. Time for a Worf intervention attempt. Chief O'Brien stops by Worf's quarters with a bottle of blood wine to cheer him up. Reluctantly, Worf lets him stay, and they talk about anything and everything under the sun, old times on the Enterprise, holodeck adventures. And the next morning, a hungover O'Brien tells Bashir and Quark that he knows what's eating Worf. He's concerned that Jadzia will never make it to Sto-vo-kor, since she never ate the heart of her enemy, or whatever else bears price of admittance. The only way they can do it is if Worf wins a great battle in her name. So they'll try to help. And it just so happens that General Martok is due to arrive at the station tomorrow. Late night, New Orleans, behind the restaurant. Ben is scrubbing clams again, telling his father that he's missing Dax right now. The old man was the sort who could help him out at a time like this with some insight and perspective. Joseph then offers up a family gift. It was Sarah's, a chain with a medallion on it, and on the back of that medallion is some writing in ancient Bajoran script. Act 4. The translation reads, Orb of the Emissary, and now Ben has a new mission. What if it exists? And what if it wasn't blacked out the way the other orbs were when the wormhole closed? He'll find it, and he'll start on Tyree, where the prophet's vision took him. Back on DS9, reports say that the latest battle with the Dominion inflicted heavy damage on the Romulans. Kretek takes it all in professional stride, and she even expresses gratitude to Kira, who is able to secure use of the moon Derna for their wounded. This breakthrough in interplanetary relations takes a pause, though, when Odo catches up with Kira later. He has some news about Derna. It appears there are high levels of trilithium isotopes there, indication that there are plasma torpedoes in significant quantity. Kira says she'll look into it. Also on DS9 now is Martok, who greets Worf the old-fashioned way, with a bat-less sparring match in the holosuite. He's got more good news, too. A dangerous mission. None of this convoy stuff Worf has been up to lately. Worf is so in. Another long day at Sisko's restaurant. Ben throws out the trash in the alley, and he's greeted by a mysterious figure, a young Bajoran in a hooded robe. The young man speaks ancient Bajoran, then says that Sisko's work is done, that he'll never find the orb of the emissary, and he pulls out a dagger and slices Ben in the stomach. Act 5. He's going to be fine. Ben gets patched up, then interviewed by Starfleet security, but he's going to be just fine. He tells his father that the young man who attacked him is a member of the Pa-Wraith cult, and even if they are out to prevent him from finding the orb of the emissary, he's still determined to go to Tyree. Catching up with O'Brien and Bashir at Quark's bar, the two are relieved that Worf is soon to be off on a dangerous, even suicidal mission with Martok to take out the Dominion shipyard where others had failed. It's fitting, but it's also incomplete. And in a moment of inspiration, Bashir says that he'll volunteer for the mission too, ensuring Jadzia gets to Sto-vo-kor, which inspires O'Brien to volunteer to be there for his friend, which inspires Quark to say that they're both out of their minds. But they're determined. Kira finally confronts Kretek with a demand from the Bajorans that they and their weapons leave Derna. It's not an order Kretek is ready to follow. And that news travels super fast these days, too, because the next people to know about it are Weyoun and Damar, who see it as potentially weakening the alliance the Federation has with the Romulans. And all that brings us back to a quiet day at Sisko's restaurant, where the chairs are empty and the door is closed. No customers today because Joe and Jake have decided to come along with Ben on his trip to Tyree. Before they can depart, though, a knock at the door comes from a young Trill woman in a Starfleet uniform. She tells Joseph that she's there to see Ben. And when the door opens, she introduces herself. It's Dax. The end.
Well, thank you, John, for that synopsis. Wonderful read through and nice way to end with it's Dax. Dax.
It's Dax. Like you want to put lights, her name in lights. It was cool. And it was a cool way to end on a cliffhanger, but like a positive cliffhanger, and exciting, like a happy cliffhanger. So one thing that I would write right at the beginning, it's so obvious, but I love it when a TV show acknowledges how much real time has passed between episodes, or in this case, between seasons. Some cliffhangers, I get it. You have to pick up right where you left off. Famously, Best of Both Worlds. It has to be right to the minute, right to the second. And that's cool. I like that too. But it's also nice to see changes because you know that you've taken the time off. And in many ways, it really works. I like Kira settling into her new role. In some ways, I wondered if it didn't work, like how acute Worf's pain is. And we'll get to that, because I like where we go with Worf. But to see a big gap with Kira and then not a lot of a gap with Worf, a little bit different, but I understand it for dramatic reasons. But yeah, you get Kira as a colonel, Odo finding his chill, just like the delivery of that line where they talk about the kiss and he says, "Changed my life." I love that so much. It was such, literally 3 words, and he delivers it beautifully. That was such an moment in this episode. Loved it.
Yeah, you get Colonel Kira. So when you get a new title, you obviously get a new hairstyle.
Yes, you do. And I thought it was great. Yeah.
And I agree. I love Odo's new lease on life at the very beginning of this season, because we are now at the very beginning of season 7.
Yeah.
And I love when he said to Kira that things may seem bleak at the moment, but there's always hope. That just seemed so very Star Trek in the moment to me, and something that Odo in previous years, and certainly at the beginning, would never have said. He's all about the law, order, these are the way of things, nothing changes. And then it kind of cascades into what you just said, and you see like the culmination of Odo's journey in a millisecond almost.
Yeah. That's great acting, and that is great writing coming together, where you say everything you need to say with the greatest efficiency. It felt very real. I think that's another theme we're going to come back to in this episode. Now, there was a moment that I wondered if it struck you the same way that it did me. Worf saying to Nog, "Is that the reason you joined Starfleet Ensign, to be safe?" Okay, I felt like, Worf, you need to slow your roll. Right? Nog is a kid. This might be a learning moment, for sure. You are at war, but Starfleet wasn't founded as an excuse for battles and endangering others. It is first a mission of exploration. And while that isn't always safe either, it's okay to not be shot at once in a while.
Well, you see, I actually saw that differently. I saw that as the outward reaction, and Worf, basically he's dealing with his his desperation and his depression by outwardly lashing out at people. And he did that to Nog.
He 100% is. I agree with you there. It's all the internal turmoil coming out. I still think he needs to give Nog an apology at some point when he's worked through his stuff. So
I hope so.
We'll catch up with Worf again. But hey, another important thing in that scene, shout out to stem bolts.
Yeah.
They're back. Very good. Very good.
They have to be important when you send Federation's, not flagship, but their most advanced tactical ship.
Well, it was one of 2 of the most advanced tactical ships.
Oh, right.
Yeah, down to 1 now. Yeah.
I guess you have to be more valiant to schlep along stem bolts.
Oh, yeah, too soon.
Is it? So the scene where Worf insists that Vic sings all the way, I felt that it was spiritually like reminiscent to when Rick forces Sam to sing as time goes by.
100%. Loved that. Loved that moment. Let's cut back to Earth for a moment. Okay. I love crawfish étouffée. I love Creole shrimp. I love barbecue shrimp. Just one question. Why would any of those be the special at Sisko's Creole Kitchen? Because I think they should just literally be on the menu every day and probably always great. So, Just saying. It is Sisko's Creole Kitchen. He's going to have some Creole and some Cajun dishes on there. So all good stuff. And now I'm hungry.
One day I want somebody to write the definitive book on why someone would run a kitchen without earning income for that restaurant.
I know.
Because
I know.
And I want to get to the positive part of that, because if in fact he doesn't need the income, then he's doing it for the love of it. And if you're doing it for the love of it, it's going to show in the product. You're going to taste that in the product.
They're all special. That's it. They're all special. Yeah.
I really liked seeing Avery flex his actual jazz piano playing skills in that scene, because the man can play.
So good. So good. Yeah. Man, again, it's repetitive when I talk about how great Jeffrey Combs is. Tell me, Damar, when you're alone, do you even bother with a glass, or do you drink that swill directly from the bottle? he just savors that moment. He savors it, and the tension between them is great. And they've done such a good job of building and maintaining tension, whether it was with Weyoun and Dukat or now Weyoun and Damar. I love every moment of it. It's so cool to see people who shouldn't be together, who normally would be each other's enemies, but they're forced into this position to work together and yet still taking shots.
There's a strange kind of sibling rivalry going on there.
There is. Yeah.
It's nice though, because neither want to give ground. They have to work with each other, but at the same time, they can't help but poke at each other every once in a while.
Yeah.
Now, two things I love about this episode. I love drinking buddy moments. So who doesn't love when Chief O'Brien comes into Worf's barges into Worf's really, and
right. Yeah,
but with a Klingon blood wine bottle in hand, and starts regaling themselves of the good old days. And when he mentioned Barclay and Geordi, I'm like, yeah, man, right? That's good stuff.
So good. It's
right.
So
it's
good.
Just like, let's talk about the good old days, and I thought that was a nice bit. But I also like the non-drinking moment, like you said, with Damar and his Kanar and Weyoun and. Something tells me, though, they bring this up a lot. Something tells me that something's going to happen with Damar and his problem, much like the way that he blurted out his secret to destroy the minefield to Quark.
Yeah,
because of Kanar.
I agree. Yeah. I'm looking forward to how that plays out. Very curious there.
Kanar is the MVP of the Dominion War.
It is. It is. Yeah. I do love, anytime we're back on Earth, I really appreciate it. And I know that Star Trek is not an Earthbound show, but I do think you need that to ground it. And when we get so detailed about a place and a time, they mentioned Armstrong Park in New Orleans, very real place. Been there. I love that. They mentioned Jackson Square, Jack Square, if you're in the know, real place. And they mention a date. They give it June of 2331, which is, we're always used to hearing star dates. But I like how this puts it in a place and a time. So very nice to hear. I also love, it's so Romulan. I love Kretek saying about the Jumja stick. It has a distinct flavor. I mean, it's such a non-committal word. That's like the kiss of death. How was the play? It was interesting.
It was unique.
It was unique. Yeah. You're done then. Yeah. And just reflecting what you said, the scene with Worf and O'Brien and the blood wine is great. It was nice to hear those references, but I loved how concise and funny without being slapstick or jokey that was too. Just one drink out of the bottle. Yes, it was nice to see you. And then they were trying to cut the scene there. Really well played. Yeah.
You make mention of Jeffrey Combs a lot. I make mention a lot of Avery's and Sirach's relationship on the show. And I love that little peck on the cheek that he gave Jake when he was looking at the Q's Photoshop digital profiling pad.
Yes.
By the way, nice Q reference, by the way.
The identigraph. Yes. Yeah. Oh, and no, here's a question, though. Did Ben really need help translating the words orb and emissary from the back of the medallion? Come on, dude. How many times have you seen your name in ancient Bajoran? That's the one thing you should know.
3 pads worth of information.
3 pads. Yes. So many pads to get that one word. Yeah.
That must be in his contract. It's like Avery cannot be shot with any less than 3 pads on his desk. Make him look busy.
That was good. Yeah.
So, I do have a little bit of the plot contrivance issue with oh, by the way, here's your biological mother that you never heard from or of.
Yeah.
And then she also has this, the only thing that Joseph maybe kept of her aside from the photo. And it also says Orb of the Emissary on the back of it.
Mm-hmm.
Come on, man. Like do the Goonies treasure hunt thing. Give us One-Eyed Willie's map and his compass and all that kind of stuff. And put us on an adventure. Just don't say oh, hey, look, it's on the back of this locket.
Here it is. Yeah.
Let's go.
Right. Right. I will point out, I know that medical treatment in the 24th century is great, but why is Joseph still working at the restaurant when Ben just got sliced open? Come on, dude, you can close for the day. You're about to close anyway, so just close for the day. Your customers will understand. You can have a sign out front, closed due to unforeseen stabbing. It's all right.
The special for today is blood pudding. Don't ask.
Yeah.
Yeah. I went there.
Yeah.
So speaking of blood pudding, the Pa Wraith cultist. Now, I've done a lot of martial arts. I've used a lot of sharp blades, a lot of sharp swords, a lot of sharp knives. And yes, that knife would cut. It's like Doug Marcaida says on Fortune Fire, this will cut. But that knife will not do what it did to Benjamin Sisko in the alleyway. No way. He has to cut through an apron. He has to cut through his shirt. He has to cut through skin and fat. So I'm just saying that's a lot of blood for a little bitty knife.
Well, that's true. A lot of blood for a little bitty knife. And, not going too deep because he was able to be saved and come back to work the next day. So,
yeah.
Get
on Starfleet Medical.
Yeah, right. Mm-hmm. And I do love Admiral Ross in that last scene. I like that we're developing Admiral Ross a bit. And here you have two factions that are, out of his command, but he's there as sort of a mediator. I just love him trying, let's try to stay calm. Dude, your words are not going to have any bearing on this situation. Trust me. Yeah.
Well, he tried to do the exact same thing in the last episode when, when the Romulan senator and Martok were going at each other. It's him and Sisko are like, hey, everyone, cool it.
Yeah.
Right? We're all on the same side.
And they're just like, you're not even in the same room,
Yeah. We don't hear you.
Yeah.
We don't hear you. But who we do hear and who we do see, hello to Ezri Dax at the end. Wow.
Yes. And I cannot wait to talk more about her when we get more of her. You and I both loved Dax 1. I think we're about to just love, again, Dax 2.
Freshly joined Dax delivered straight to your door in 45 minutes or less, or your next Dax is free. But where are the cheesy breadsticks?
We'll get right back to Image in the Sand, but first, a word from this week's sponsor, and that's you. Yes, all of you who have been so generous to join us over at Patreon. That's patreon.com/missionlog. So much happening there. A vibrant and thriving board of communication on Patreon, but also our Discord, which, Norman, is just fantastic.
Yeah, I've heard us say this episode to episode when we actually mention Patreon, but it's true. One thing that we offer our Patreon subscribers is this wonderfully robust community of fans, new and old, of fans across all the series. So many different topics are being talked about. So many different stories are being shared. Similar experiences with fandom and food and more food and then fandom and things in between. So if you want to participate in that discussion and join our Discord, you can do so at the lowest level of Patreon. And of course, we appreciate it if you subscribe to the higher tiers. That helps us what we do here at Mission Log.
And you get some cool swag to boot. So don't forget, you would get early access to our unedited recording sessions. You get swag. You get access to the Discord. Ooh, every Monday morning, almost every Monday morning, you're there with Monday Morn with you, Norm. And it truly is a community. We're truly making friends there. So please join us again at patreon.com/missionlog.
Hi, Dr. Phil Phlox here, also known as John Billingsley. I volunteer for the Hollywood Food Coalition. We serve terrific meals to the unhoused 7 nights a week. We assist 100 nonprofits with their food needs. We work with community partners to address food insecurity in Southern California. If you're in LA, come and volunteer with us at hofoco.org/volunteer and any Federation credits you can spare go a long way.
You are a hologram. You are designed to do as I say. All right, that's Worf to Vic. I'm not really doing Worf. I mean, you do Worf. I'm just relaying the information. Now, look, I know that this isn't what the episode is about, that moment, but I just want to stop here for a moment and talk about this if we can. Is a hologram designed to do what a human says? Because they are essentially, but most of the holograms that we've encountered when it's time for a story with a hologram, they don't necessarily, or they sort of go beyond their programming. And I wonder if the holograms, say, have a fail-safe or any sort of better understanding to do what is actually good for the real-life player. So that real-life player can come in like Worf and say, do this thing, but the hologram actually has some sense to go, that's not actually what's good for you. This other thing is good for you, which Vic tries to, divert Worf. Let's go play craps. Let's go play, blackjack. Let's do this. And Worf is having none of it. So the hologram's smart enough to have some information, or at least has some sense about what would actually benefit the player. So then, is it okay? Like, how do we feel? Is it okay for Worf to threaten and demand and then rip up a virtual simulation? You tell me, is that weird and inappropriate? Or in this case, is it therapy? Like, is it playing a game to get out the aggression? Is that okay? Or is it wrong because he keeps repeating the behavior? I'm trying to wrap my head around it, mainly because I have sympathy for Vic.
Yeah, well, it's an interesting thing with a hologram, because when Vic was describing it to Bashir, he says, like, I know that Worf is going through this, and I know that he can't do anything to me, but the band doesn't. So Vic is such an anomaly in the whole holosuite or holodeck or holographic simulation process with Starfleet. He is his own being. I mean, he is self-aware. And, going all the way back to A Measure of a Man in TNG, if you can do that and hit Picard's two other checklists, then you're a sentient being. And Vic, by all intents, is. But the other thing is, we've seen him summon his own audience. We've seen him do things that a hologram can't do. So I don't understand why he would be upset about anything. He literally could snap his fingers and the bar would be back to normal.
So that's the thing. He's got a reset button. There is a reset button on the holodeck, or a holosuite in this case, but he actually wants to show what happened. He wants to show the aftermath to Bashir and O'Brien. And it's interesting. Like, we can say that is, well, that the sense that he has is beyond his programming, but you could theoretically program enough information about consolement, sensitivity, sympathy, empathy into the command line that it's not unreasonable to think that, well, given the options, I could either hit the reset button and do the same thing night after night with Worf, or I could actually reach out to his real life friends and say, we need to talk.
I think that's what he was getting to. I think that's what he was getting to. I'm not going to change Worf because Worf is, he's a traditionalist. He's pretty much hardwired in his ways. Remember, he psychoanalyzed everybody at the very beginning of his first appearance.
Oh God, I love that. Yeah.
Right, in his way.
Yeah.
And he knows. I mean, he sees things that no one else can see, really, in these characters. So he's like, you know what? I'm not going to change Worf, but I can change his friends and make them see and make them do something that they should be doing.
Yeah.
And I think that's where he's at with that.
Yeah. So do you think it would be like, okay, let's say Worf goes in and he does this once, and we can still feel some sympathy toward Vic. And I love that he says they don't know they're holograms. I mean, brilliant line, Would you feel forgiving toward Worf's behavior if it was a one-off and he got it out of his system, even though Vic has some sensitivity? I dare not call it sentience, but he has some sensitivity beyond what the others do. Or is the real problem here just that it is a loop, that it is a cycle that Worf is stuck in? Since they're holograms, and he could theoretically just decide, well, the hologram I'm going to play is the one where I go in and I destroy a bar. Is that all right?
is this, I don't remember if it was specifically said. Maybe just I just don't remember hearing it. Maybe it's because it wasn't said. But was this the only time that Worf did this?
No.
Okay.
No. Yeah.
So no, but destroying the bar.
It sounded like it was not. It sounded like he had done it before.
Okay.
So
well, then it's a pattern.
Yeah.
And if I don't know, I have my own opinions about this scene.
Mm-hmm.
That I don't think it really should have lasted as long as it did in this episode.
It was a long scene. I agree. I agree. Yeah.
Yeah. So
Yeah.
with Tears of the Prophets in this episode,
mm-hmm.
I just think that these scenes are eating up so much exposition time.
Yep.
That, and as much as I love seeing James Darren sing, I really do.
Yeah.
But there's so much of the story that you have to tell.
It does break up the pacing in a weird way. I agree with you there. Yeah. Well, let me ask you this. So last week, we both were kind of critical of the idea that there was so much happening in the plot that we didn't feel like there was enough impact or reflection on the loss of Dax. But we're front and center with that now with Worf. In your opinion, was it enough? Did that satisfy the need that you had coming from the last episode?
No, absolutely not. Absolutely not. Because we're talking about 3 months past.
Mm-hmm.
So you're going to be able to do some healing 3 months after what happened. I wanted to see those reactions happen then, when it was fresh, when it was real, when it was raw, because those 3 months are the 3 months analogous to the summer break that we took between that finale and the season premiere. In that time, we don't hold on to those feelings either, because we were never ever given those feelings to hold on to or to cherish or to remember that pain to begin with. So it just disappears.
And that's what I was getting at the top of the last segment, where I think it's cool to let things exist in real time. And it makes sense for a moment like Kira and Odo's growth and any details about the war you want to spread out. That's fine. But the Worf thing didn't sit right with me because we got so little in the last episode, and now we're trying to front load this one with all of that, where it should have been, a much longer period of time. So, I'm glad that we got there, but I thought its placement was not satisfactory.
And it would have been a little bit better if it was a little bit more consistent. In Hard Time, the chief really is consistent about how much struggle that he's trying to fight through and how many of his friends he's being standoffish with or cruel to or bitter with. With Worf, it's just this one note with Nog and this one note with Vic.
Yeah.
But you wanted to see more. You needed to feel more.
Yeah.
I guess my big problem is that I don't feel anything for that loss because nothing was asked of us to make us feel that way.
Yeah.
Aside from the fact that she was murdered.
Yeah.
But that's an act of violence. We need to feel our way through the resolution.
Yeah, I agree. All right, well, let's talk a little bit more about Worf here, because this is the thing that I found interesting, challenging about this. So we know that he's unique. He's unique among Klingons at the very least, and his beliefs in Klingon culture and religious tradition, it's genuine. He truly holds those beliefs, and you could even say he's a bit fundamentalist compared to a lot of other Klingons that we've encountered. He's really trying to pour himself into it. And I'm interested in this idea that he is so hell-bent on getting Jadzia into Sto-vo-kor because what? Like, that's serving him, that she's not Klingon enough, and she's not Klingon, even though she made a good Klingon when the occasion called for it. She certainly behaved like one because she's absorbed part of that culture. But at the end of the day, that's not her tradition, and we don't know if it was her desire. And that seems a bit like, well, selfish behavior to me. Not that Worf has ever been accused of selfish behavior before. And I understand that funerals are for the living, not for the dead. And there's something to be said about Worf's dedication here that is admirable in some way. And if it helps him move on and be a better person, then fine. And look, there is a beauty in seeing Bashir and O'Brien volunteer too, because of their friendship with him and, well, O'Brien's friendship with Bashir or obsession with Dax, however you want to chalk that up. But still, I wonder if anyone else had anything to say about this. Now, we can't reach Sisko, so he can't. But what about Dax's parents? What about anybody else on Trill? Or Starfleet, for that matter, who are at war, and are they okay with two of their finest hopping on a Klingon ship just to go do a thing? And I kind of I sympathize with Quark here. Would you want to spend an eternity there?
Yeah.
They're talking about
Stovacor. Yeah.
Right, exactly. And it's presumptuous to assume that you know better than someone else's preferences, especially after they're dead, because they can't say. So I respect Quark's impulse to ask if they can do something more reasonable. Make a donation. I mean, it's a great line. It's a great line.
It's so Ferengi, right?
It's so Ferengi, but here's the thing. He's right, because it's all symbolic anyway. The person's gone. They're not coming back. Everything that you're doing is symbolic anyway. So whether it's making a donation, which is funny and so Ferengi, or going off to do this mission, which then endangers yourself and the other people who are along for it. Like, I get it, it's a Klingon ship, and Klingons, they'll volunteer for any damn fool thing where they're about to get killed. But you still are endangering other people that way, and I'm not sure that everybody on that ship necessarily signed up for the same thing. At a certain point, they just have to follow orders. But the thing that just doesn't quite sit right with me is that this is an imposition of putting Worf's beliefs ahead of everything. Because what? Because we have to snap him out of it? Well, okay, I understand we want to snap him out of it. Well, we also have to be respectful, too. So
let's put a pin in that, because if I tell you how I feel about it, I will take my own morals, meetings, and messages out of the equation.
Then let's come back to it. I'm glad that I planted the seed there.
Yeah, and it's there. I definitely thought about that, but I put it in a different segment of our show.
Good. Stay tuned. That's your next cliffhanger, folks. Yeah.
But I did want to get back into the belief systems, because there's an interesting thing here that is, it's on the surface, but I think it kind of permeates everything in Deep Space Nine since the very beginning to now, and that's the belief system between the Bajoran people and the emissary and the religious powers that be, i.e. now Kai Wynn, and now the Pa Wraiths. So I've always found this topic in Deep Space Nine actually far more interesting when it actually is presented in the series, way more than the Dominion War, because I think that if well written and actually if done consistently, there's an interesting war now going on in the spiritual fabric of the Bajoran people.
Yeah. Well, because the Dominion War is moving pieces around on a chessboard. But this religious war is much more personal and driven by other motivations and emotions and beliefs, the power of belief. So that is a fascinating topic. Yeah.
But now you always had the prophets being on the equation, the right side of the equation. When I say right, I mean the moral side of the equation, where the Bajorans, they would pray to them, they would worship them because they thought that would be bestowed upon them the gifts of the prophets. Yeah. But then you enter the Pa Wraiths. And now you put them in the equation. And now you have this cult, quote unquote cult, that worships the Pa Wraiths. What makes them any more right or wrong than the people that worship the prophets? Because as of right now, the prophets, and this is seeing it from a bird's eye view, from a top-down view, the prophets really haven't done anything for the Bajorans that we have seen that has been truly positive, aside from being worshipped.
Yeah, they stay hands off until they're asked by Sisko to prevent the Dominion fleet from coming through the wormhole. But other than that, they answer things with ambiguity and obfuscation, which is no answer at all.
Right.
Yeah.
So that's the prophets. I'm taking a lot of this, just kind of fast forwarding the contextualization of the prophets for 6 seasons. But now you have the Pa Wraiths. We've seen what they can do. But the thing is that it seems like if you believe that one side of the equation exists, you have to believe that the other side of the equation exists, because if you don't, then you're only cherry picking what you believe is good or right about your own belief system. The Pa Wraiths do exist. The cult that worships them are people that have the choice to worship them. And according to Odo, they haven't done anything wrong. They haven't exacted any violence. They haven't broken any station regulations. All they're doing are wearing red armbands.
Yeah.
And you're using those red armbands to what? Make them out to be evil or making them out to be sinister. Why? That's the question. That's a rhetorical question. Why?
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Now, yes, that one rogue element did do something to Sisko, but how many rogue elements, i.e. Kai Wynn, who's the head of their spiritual order, are doing things not even in the best interests or altruistic needs of her people?
Yeah, she's a nightmare. We already know that. Absolutely. Everybody on the station knows that. Right. So, and if I'm not mistaken, the whole thing about the introduction here of the cult of the Pa Wraith, they just sort of think like, well, okay, with the Pa race in dominant, they are entering a new age on Bajor, but nobody's actually defined what that is. And whatever age of Bajor is orchestrated by the prophets, we haven't seen anything of that either. They stay quiet, except when they talk to Ben. And Ben hasn't really gotten straight answers out of them. So I get what you're saying. There isn't a really, other than just being told this is the good side and this is the bad side, there isn't really any demonstration of what that means. So you can't blame them for joining the cult of the Pa Wraith at a certain point.
Last time I checked, a prophet without permission invaded Kira's body. A Pa Wraith without permission invaded Jake's body. Yep. They went to war, willing to sacrifice either mortal being that they, without permission, remember, I'm saying that, without permission, inhabited, right? So neither one of them has any solid footing to say that we are the better, the more pious, the true spiritual deities of these people. You did the exact same thing to each other on two innocent people.
Yeah, they don't have the moral high ground. And at that point, for all the talking that they do to Ben, they could have expressed something about that, but they chose not to. Yeah.
I have a small one last thing, though, to add here.
Okay.
So there's an old 23rd century saying, beware of Romulans bearing gifts.
Ooh, I think I've heard that before.
Yeah, Dr. McCoy said that to Kirk in The Wrath of Khan. So I'm going to put this question out there for people. Have any of you heard the tale of the scorpion and the frog? Maybe yes, maybe no. Yeah. If you haven't, have you heard about the scorpion and the fox?
I don't think I know that one.
Does that one ring a bell?
No, I know the scorpion and the frog, but I don't know the scorpion and the fox.
Okay, so how about this? How about the Romulans and everyone who tries to trust them? Everyone's heard of that one, right?
Yeah. I think I see where you're going with this. Yeah. Yes.
Because as soon as Kira started to make headway and started to get comfortable in her own way of trying to be this leader for Deep Space Nine and to fill Sisko's shoes, and starts believing in this Romulan senator, what does the senator do but do what a scorpion does? It's in their nature. Yeah. It's in their nature to backstab. And I find this fascinating that Kira has now been put in this position that she doesn't want to be in. She's playing the part of a politician / leader. She doesn't like to be. She likes her feet on the ground.
Yeah.
And now she's trying to do what she thinks that Sisko would do and try to appease both Starfleet and Starfleet's allies in this war. And she knows as soon as she starts trusting the Romulans, she knows something's going to go south. But I do like that they planted the seed with her and Odo at the beginning, that Odo's starting to change. And I think some of that is actually influencing Kira's behavior. But this happens, the thing with the senator and the hospital and the weapons and the the munitions that are being stored there. It just goes to show you can't trust a Romulan.
I just want to get this on the record before it becomes an issue. If my program is ever terminated, I do not need anyone to try to get me into Stovokor.
Norman, I'm getting a vision from the prophets. It's a sandy dune somewhere, maybe Tyree or maybe Nevada. I'm not sure, but it's blowing away. And you know what it's revealing? It's revealing like a clay mask, and then that mask comes into focus, and it's Norman Lau, to tell us if the episode holds up for you. Well, actually, we've arrived at that point where we ask each other, does the episode hold up and what are the morals, meanings, message? But the vision in my head from the prophets says, first it's you to tell us if the episode holds up. So
John, the sleeper has awakened.
All right. Well, so the eyes pop open as soon as we started the segment. So, yeah, tell us.
You know, I actually really do like this episode. I do. And in many ways, it's not just a continuation of Tears of the Prophets, but I think it's a soft and necessary epilogue to Jadzia's death and how those who she left behind that were most special to her, namely like Benjamin and Julian and Quark and obviously Worf, how they're all trying to come to terms with her death, but how they're trying to come together and heal each other as this collective group of friends and quote unquote family from her murder. What I like about how they handled this episode, especially in the writing side, is that there wasn't this plot line to try and find who murdered Jadzia and to try and seek revenge on that, because that's something that Worf maybe could have done. That's something that all of them could have conspired to do.
Sure.
But they wanted to do it the more noble way, the more Klingon way of trying to help Worf find peace with himself and to try to do the right thing by Jadzia. And I know that you have issues with trying to reconcile why they would help Worf to try and get Jadzia into Sto-vo-kor, but I think that the way it sat for me is that it was the most romantic thing, the most honorable thing that Worf thought he could do for Jadzia. I think it was his only way of expressing how much he loved her and how much he wanted to be eventually connected with her spiritually for eternity. Because eventually he will die too, and he will have to go to Sto-vo-kor. Or maybe he could go to Sto-vo-kor in this daring raid against the Dominion, who knows? But he wants to be connected with her for eternity. And if that's not the most noble thing that he could do to honor her memory, I'm not sure what is. I do think that the writing around it was a little clunky. And again, I'm going to reiterate this because I think it needs to be said. Please don't send emails at me about this, but I do think that we lost a lot of opportunity to explore these ideas because of how much time we spent with Vic. I really do. I love that he sings those songs that we love. I love Jimmy Darren because he's so charming to watch. But between Tears of the Prophets and this episode, there's just too much exposition to fit in. And you leave a lot of what could have been worked into this episode in Vic's lounge. In that time, in that space. But I do like this episode quite a bit. I would recommend this episode. How about you?
Yeah, I mean, you nailed it as far as kind of the problematic script issues, the storytelling issues here. Like, it is a good story. It's a good journey for our characters to be on, but then it gets clunky when you try to shoehorn in everybody and complete all the threads that are left over from the other episode. We do have that problem of time, again, partly that time being compressed and partly that time being blown apart. So it feels a little weird. It feels like if all of this had happened over the build of several episodes, then, paying off with Dax's death, not just like, oh, here's the thing we're going to slip in at the very end, where then we could actually get some emotional resonance in the moment. I think it would have felt very different. So I like the moments that we're hitting. They just feel out of order, or they feel rushed, or they feel clunky. Now, that said, I think this episode feels much stronger to me than the last episode. The last episode was very clunky, very rushed, and you're just trying to fit too much in before you go to that season break. In this, An Image in the Sand, I love Brock Peters, and I love seeing the Sisko family like this, just real and raw, but also loving and working through their stuff. I wish we had a lot more of this along the way, but that makes me treasure an episode like this. I just, a little moment in that really tough scene between Joseph and Ben. Any other secrets I should know? Just my gumbo recipe, but I'm taking that to my grave.
My favorite line of the episode.
Yes. And that kind of moment, it doesn't feel forced. It isn't cheesy. And it just brings the happiest smile to my face.
Mm-hmm.
I wrote it in my notes. I love this scene more than any other scene in the episode because I love the build and I love the payoff because it feels so real. And even though they've had a fight, they still have this family bond, this love, and not in a sitcom way, in a very genuine way that has emotional resonance, which is what we've been looking for the other plot lines here.
Yeah.
Now, I will say that this episode is a little incomplete, and you and I, before recording a few days ago, we had talked about whether or not we would do this as a combination with the next episode or treat this one on its own. And I was of a mind right away, this one feels so incomplete to me that I felt like we needed to do it with the next episode, with Shadows and Symbols. But then I watched Shadows and Symbols and I thought, well, we'll end up either going super long because that one is very, plot heavy. There's a lot of density there. So we'd end up giving short shrift to this one. Mm-hmm. So when we assess whether or not it holds up, I'm kind of back to where we were last week, which is to say it has to hold up as a piece of the story. As an episode, it's very hard to take it just on its own. But I think the strength of this episode is that it reminds me of Family on TNG.
Yeah.
So we just came out of that heavy action, heavy two-parter, best of both worlds. And what we needed to do is decompress. We need to take a moment to get our breath. Mm-hmm. And I don't know if that means then that this is the strongest opening for the season, but it is a very necessary episode within telling the whole story. I think TNG, just because of the timing of Family, that stands out a bit more to me than this one. But the moments here that we get are so strong. Tonally, both of those episodes depart from that relentless action, and you just get to sit with the characters for a while. And I love it for all of those reasons. But again, it's not really that an episode you can just recommend out of context. So it's another one of those that holds up because of the plot, but not necessarily because it's self-contained. But I loved it. And it's one of those where I loved it more on the rewatches than I even did the first time around.
Agreed.
And I didn't want to spoil anything for myself watching the next one, but I'm kind of glad that I watched it because then I could reassess this one in our discussion. Strong episode, great episode. Now, that takes us to morals, meanings, messages. And I feel a little bit like I'm back to where I was with the last one to say this is another plot-heavy episode, paced more leisurely than the last one. And I don't think that, again, this is an episode that necessarily has a strong statement that it wants to make, that it wants to grab the audience. It's not a you see Timmy moment here in Sight Anywhere, but there are wonderful nuggets spread throughout. Mm-hmm. I mean, first of all, Odo has a line that goes by so quickly that it needs to be called out. In times of trouble, some people find comfort in hate and fear. And if you don't think that's relevant, age after age, decade after decade, generation after generation, well, look around. Because
is it me? I'm sorry, John, but is it me or it's like for pound, he had like the best scene in the episode?
Yeah.
Like so pound for pound.
Yeah. So much done so efficiently. It's like they distilled Odo down to the perfect moments in just a few words. So script writing here is top notch for those. There is also a theme of loss and denial, but reconciliation and family and friendship in this. Worf is, of course, the prime example here. His loss of Dax is very real, very genuine, and he doesn't have the resources or tools to deal with it. So he takes out his frustration in these damaging ways. Parallel that to Joseph Sisko in a similar way, not the same, but similar. He tries to bury the past and his feelings, and he even went so far as to cover up that truth with his son until they come to blows. And those were heartfelt, genuine, emotionally strong scenes. But ultimately, everyone comes together for each other. O'Brien and Bashir are there for Worf. The Siskos are there for Ben. And in the end, that is lovely. And that is a real strength, not just of this episode, but the series overall. What about you, Norman, catching up on any morals, meanings, messages here?
Well, I mean, I landed in very similar places here. And I guess that the big message is a lyric that we all know, or most of us know, and that's, I get by with little help from my friends. I mean, it's nice. It can be aloof as a lyric, but it can be very meaningful when you really understand what that means in the context of this episode. So, unlike in Tears of the Prophets, I enjoy this episode's attempt at trying to get all the characters together who were affected by Jadzia's murder and coming together as friends, especially with someone who they now are admitting that they truly care about. This is Worf, because he needs it the most, obviously. Mm-hmm. So after this unprecedented act of violence that he took out on Vic's lounge, I mean, even for a Klingon, it was pretty over the top.
Yeah.
O'Brien and Bashir and Quark all kind of conspired in a way and paid attention to the warning signs that Worf was externally exercising on everybody, like he did with Nog, again, like he did with Vic. Mm-hmm. And I think that they all kind of came to their own terms of how they wanted to do something about it. Like the chief went to go drink with Worf, but not talk about Dex. And then later on at Quark's bar, they all conspired to try and help him, but how? Or why? Or what's the reason why Worf is being the way he is? It's because he needed somebody to talk to, and he doesn't have Jadzia anymore. He needed that person who understood him, and she's gone. So he doesn't have anyone to talk to. He's bottling up all that rage. And what happens when you don't have anyone to turn to? This was his wife. This was somebody who put up with all of his BS for so long.
And there is much.
But and also made him honest with himself, made him, understand the truth about certain things that he said, and made him own up to his responsibilities. So going all the way back to Captain Cusack and the sound of her voice, and going all the way back to his way when we understood what Vic was able to do with Kira and Odo, this is something that I feel very interesting in terms of a theme, in terms of a momentum that we're getting here with Deep Space Nine. And this is really important, having someone to talk to, and not necessarily a counselor, but just a friend or a friendly face or a friendly voice. Someone who's non-judgmental, someone who just opens up their ears to you and listens. That's obviously going a long way. And it didn't just help with Worf's needs, but as you said before, Sisko, Benjamin, and Joseph Sisko were kind of at each other's throats here until they started talking to each other, and until Joseph opened up and they started becoming sounding boards to each other.
Yeah.
And started listening and providing each other the information that they needed to get past the past with Joseph, and get past, Benjamin's needs of trying to understand what these prophets' visions are about. So a listening, non-judgmental friend, or someone who just hears you, maybe that's just the point of all of this. Maybe you can get away from the issue of focusing on your own problems, because the person who's listening to you may offer up examples of, you're not the only one that's going through things that are this hard.
Yeah.
And they may give you some clarity with that kind of response, because sometimes we focus on our own needs so strongly, and our own despair and our own, desperation, and these very, 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 very heavy feelings, that we can't get out of our own head and see that, if I look at it a different way, maybe there's a better path through this, but I can't see it for myself. I need somebody to help me with this. And hopefully this is going to be a trend that we see more in season 7, and we're at just the very beginning. So I'm looking forward to seeing where all this is going.
Mission Log is produced by Roddenberry Entertainment, executive producer Rod Roddenberry. Our website and your opportunity to comment and connect with us is missionlogpodcast.com. If you'd like to support Mission Log directly, you can do so at patreon.com/missionlog. And for more Star Trek news and discussion, be sure to visit trekmovie.com.
On the next Mission Log, Shadows and Symbols.
Some of the music for Mission Log provided by Warp 11, online at warp11.com. Special thanks to consulting producers, Adam Brusky, Homer Frizzell, Mike Richards, and Mike Schabel. If you ever plan to do some digging through the sand looking for a face, try to avoid Chester's litter box. There's not a face in there. Don't ask me how I know that. End transmission.
This is a Roddenberry podcast. For more great podcasts, visit podcast.roddenberry.com.